Want to go far in business and in life? You can't do it alone. The secret is expanding your network of personal relationships, building friendships, connecting on an intimate level, away from the office, over a coffee or cocktail. Welcome to All In with the real Nate Payo. The show that asks what happens when you go all in and leverage the power of your network of personal relationships.
From author Donnie Bovine comes the book, How to Be a Success Champion, available on Amazon. After years of living other people's dreams, author Donnie Bovine decided to jump out on his own and start a business, thinking it would be easy. Instead, he had a rude awakening and quickly understood that he had spent 20 years being an employee and had no idea how to be a business owner. His business was tanking, and he was on the brink of losing everything when he decided to fight for business freedom. In this must-read and life-changing book, author Donnie Bovine shares with readers his story intermingled with lessons learned from his mistakes and his failures. In How to Be a Success Champion, you will find advice the author received from mentors and how he went from zero to a six-figure business. The author walks you through the steps of how to get out of your own way, how to play the game of business and win, find your strengths, how to network effectively, how to build a personal brand, how to create champions for your business, how to get great at sales, how to take complete ownership of you and your business. How to Be a Success Champion from author Donnie Bovine, available on Amazon in both Kindle and paperback editions. Order your copy right now. It makes a great book for corporate events too. How to Be a Success Champion from author Donnie Bovine, available on Amazon.
Hello. Welcome to the All In podcast with Nate Payo. Of course, I am your host, Nate Payo. Today, I'm joined with fabulous Dana Pharant. She is CEO of $1 million company. Well, let's back up a little bit. She's been helping people transform their lives for 25 plus years. She's been the CEO of $1 million company. She's a two-time award-winning speaker, best-selling author of five books, and has earned her the title of Master Healer. And get this, she was also a dominatrix. Welcome to the show, Dana. How are you doing?
I'm doing awesome. Thanks, Nate.
Cool. Well, it's glad to have you back. And for those of you that didn't know, well, of course you didn't know, we recorded this before, and I had some technical difficulties, and we weren't able to get the recording off of Zoom. We had to redo it. And one of the things I think for me, when I was starting out my podcast, was I was like, I set a timeline like, hey, I'm going to do this thing for at least a year before I give up on it. And the reason why I set that timeline is I felt like in the past I had a lot of things would go wrong, and what would happen is I would just give up on it, and if it got tough. So I was like, you can't give up on this too soon because you might have something happen. And so like I've had like these technical problems they come up every now and then, and in the past I might have just said, hey, screw it, like this isn't for me, it's not worth the hassle, I'll do something else. And I think having that mindset that like you have to push yourself past like some of these things that go wrong and just realize like crap happens and you got to start over. So I appreciate you doing a second take on this.
Absolutely. It's part of business, Nate. I find that like more things go wrong than go right. And being in business, if you can get to this place where you embrace the things that go wrong and just like, okay, great. Now what? I'm pivoting again, and you just start rolling with it as opposed to, making yourself wrong or getting frustrated.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that's important to remember is like the rolling with it that you described, because shit's going to go wrong. It always does. Just hey, it's okay. Don't let it, even if it's got you like flustered in your head, just kind of roll with it. I think at least for me, like if I'm on the bad side of things, I'm like, oh crap, I'm really making it hard. Like it's the worst ever. But when it's the other person like has a little technical difficulties or some messes up, you're just like, it's part of the program. So I think you just got to be, like you said, flexible, roll with it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And to not beat yourself up about it. I mean, we are all making shit up as we go. Like, that's the thing. People don't realize, it's like, it doesn't matter how big of a company you have, we're all making shit up.
Yes. So the cool thing about it, though, because we got to re-record it, is I had the chance to pick up your book. It's called The Inner Dominatrix. And I've got a chance to read it and get a little bit more of your story. And you come from a really interesting background. You come from, I'll let you kind of share the details, but I guess you had like a little of a cult upbringing and then a self-discovery and a journey that kind of like just you went through to kind of find out who you were. Can you kind of share with us a little bit of your story?
It's pretty unique. So I grew up in a religious cult. And along with that, experienced various forms of abuse, as well as the psychological brainwashing that goes with cults. And I left that just before my 18th birthday, and then went out on a journey to try to heal the things that I had been through. So started out trying to heal the sexual trauma, and diving into all kinds of various therapies and groups, and they all helped to a degree, but I just was constantly looking for a little more. And then along the way, I had trained to become a massage therapist. So, as I was working, I came across one client who, her first session in, she discloses to me that she's involved with kink, which is the slang word for BDSM, the bondage S&M. And she wants me, of course, to know because, as a massage therapist, I'm going to see marks and bruises, and I might question her about it. And so this started a discussion where I was really intrigued. I was like, well, what is that about? And why do you want to do that? And what does that do for you? And it sparked an interest in me. I was like, oh, there's something about this. There's something I want to explore. Now, it took a few years before I had the opportunity to really in the space. I had to get rid of an ex and lean into, being able to make space for that in my life. But the most remarkable thing happened was that I had some really profound healing in that world. And it's not the place that people think. You're thinking on the outside, like, this looks so abusive. Why would you go to something that's abusive in order to heal your trauma? Like, that seems retarded. But when we take a step back and really look at what BDSM is, on the good side of it, is that there is this space set up. So we negotiate and we talk about what's okay, what's not okay. There's a lot of communication. It could be like a good 4 or 5 hour discussion prior to setting up a scene. And we call them a scene because it's not about sex. And so the scene is set up and the parameters and, what's okay, what's not okay, what's a never, what's, all of those pieces. And so I was fortunate to have some people who were really kind of coming at it from the healing vein of things. And so we crafted some scripts that allowed me to reenact the abuse and also, of course, create a different outcome so that I could take my power back. And because that was such a strong visceral experience, I transformed, like, right at the cellular level. Things changed. And I remember after one of these sessions, this was just like, I think the second really deep session that I had, looking out over this, the skyline of Toronto, and it's a gray, drizzly November day. And, the rain, it's about 5 o'clock. And so it's dark. And I look and I think, oh, isn't that pretty? Like the lights and the shine and the things. And I'm thinking, wow, that's really pretty. And at the same time, I've got this awakening of like, oh my God, I have never had that thought before. And I realized at that moment that my entire life up until that point, I had been depressed and I just didn't realize it. And so I had, along with the things that I was trying to change and deprogram, I had also been working with this depression, and that and the sexual trauma were two really big things that shifted in getting involved with the kink world. And then, of course, coming from the massage therapy background and really loving the healing work with people, I wanted to learn. I wanted to learn that side of it. So I switched sides, and I picked up the whips, and I started studying with people of how to do this dominatrix work and how to take people on this journey. And I did that for a number of years, and it was great. And then I also found that not a lot of people wanted to go to the dungeon. Not a lot of people want to go to that extreme. So then I transitioned again and started to find more energy-based, more psychology-based work to create nearly the same shift. It's not quite as fast, but the same kind of dramatic shifts for people to unlock their body and get them moving. And of course, I have a strong background in business because concurrent to all of that, I had 2 massage therapy clinics and a massage spa supply outlet that we built up to a good size and sold. And, so I have all this business background, and I love getting people unlocked and into what I call their inner dominatrix, because that power and who I had to become in that world, who I had to step into, and not pretend to step into it, but actually become the dominatrix, is a piece that I really see missing for a lot of people in business, that they fake it. They fake it to try to do that, fake it till you make it. But, when you actually transition into owning who you are and your place in the world, then that shines and that shows up for people.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a huge example of, I want to use the word role play in a different sense of maybe than what it's known in kink world, but this role play of becoming who you are. And a lot of times in business, you get put into a role that you're not comfortable with. Maybe it's a promotion, but maybe a lot of times business owners start because of they're just they had to, their company fired them and they started a business, or they were really good. Maybe their business that they're working for went out of business, but they had this group of clients, and the clients just came to them and said, hey, we need you to fill this role. We need you to start this business. So you go from being maybe a really, really high performing salesperson to running and managing a business. And you have a whole bunch of different roles and responsibilities. And your personality has to change to run as a different dynamic. So you're trying to figure that out as you go. And you watch and you say, hey, well, who have I learned this from? And you think about maybe past bosses or past coworkers or past people that have been in your life. You're like, well, I don't really identify with the way they ran their business, but my way is not really working either. And you're trying to find your voice. And I think that example shows hey, you kind of start off maybe with a little bit of role play of hey, if I want to be this person, this leader, I got to step up and do things that leaders do, even if I don't feel comfortable with it. And because you stepping up into this role, okay, I can't pretend to be a leader. I got to be a real leader. You are changing your inner dynamic of who you are, and you're finding your voice, you're finding your confidence, and you're able to, do what it takes to be successful in your business, which could be a new job, could be a new promotion, could be running a big business. It could be just, maybe it's in a group or, a community that they're looking for you to be running the leadership of. So I think that's, really cool example of learning to discover who you are so that you can take your career to the next level.
Absolutely. And it's there's a pattern of growth that happens. At first we step in and it's awkward, and, it's like that Bambi legs, kind of wobbly, right? And I think the biggest mistake that a lot of people, well, I would call it a mistake, but that I see a lot of people do is that they try to fake it. They try to oh, I'm good, I got this. And in fact, when it comes to leadership, if you can show your vulnerability, that will actually allow you to be a more effective leader, because the people that you're leading will identify with you. They will want to support you, now to a degree. But in that beginning of okay, so we're all figuring this out. This is what I'm stepping into. This is the goal and where we're going, right? If you want to, get into, say, it's actually a great example. So right now I have a client who I'm really transitioning her, coaching her how to transition out of being the manager that is the go-to for the answers, to being the one that empowers her people and her team to come up with the creative solutions and implement them. And the transition, in doing that is kind of painful and it's kind of wobbly, but in letting people know this is what she's doing, then they can support her in that decision. They can say, oh, you're supposed to ask me questions. So, it can be collaborative. We don't have to be this solo guru up in the sky that has all the answers anymore.
Mm-hmm. I think that's an important thing to, bring up, is that if you're going to be the leader, you don't have to have all the answers. And I don't think everybody expects you to have all the answers. I think sometimes when you become a new leader, you think, oh, everybody's looking to me for all the answers. But you have to realize that you're not there because you have all the answers. You're there because you're the person that's going to gather. I like to say you're herding the cats, you're getting them on a room, and you're pulling the people in who do have the answers. So it's okay to not have the answers, but you need to be decisive. You need to be confident in that decision. If it's like, hey, what are you doing over here? I don't know. What should we do? What do you think we should do? I don't know. And you're a spaz every time. No, there's no confidence. But when you say, this is something I haven't encountered before. I feel this way about it, and I'm going to seek advice of others, and I'm going to weigh it, and I'm going to make a decision. And you say, I don't have the answer, but I will find an answer, and I will stand by my decision. And if it proves to be the wrong decision, you're not going to change course 6,000 times immediately, but hey, I've realized I've made a poor choice, and this would have been a better one, and we're going to change directions. We're going to make a better decision and move forward. I think people still stand behind that. You don't have to be the go-to know-it-all. So cool.
Yeah.
Well, I would like to ask you my first set question I like to get from all my guests, which is this idea around luck. And how has luck been for you in your life, or do you even believe in luck?
I think there's space for both the luck concept and the hard work concept. Definitely there has been opportunities that have opened up for me that I can only explain it through luck. And at the same time, those opportunities present themselves far more often when I'm out taking action. So to me, I love the expression, it's like, God or universe makes you, puts more opportunities in your path if you're actually moving. So you meet halfway. It's a joint effort, that there is the luck, but there's also the action required by the individual.
Yeah, I agree with that too. It's like, if you're moving, if you have either a very specific destination or a general destination, you just say, hey, look, I know if I'm moving, I'm going to meet people, I'm going to meet ideas, I'm going to get exposed to new opportunities. And I'm aware, because when you're moving, you want to be cognizant of which direction you're going. You start noticing things. You start noticing the people that you're in. And it's weird how when you start thinking hey, I'm looking for XYZ in my life, and you become a little bit more cognizant of looking for that person, all of a sudden you bump into somebody, you're like, oh, why is this a coincidence that I keep meeting the people I'm looking to meet? But you can increase those odds, I think, too, when you start hanging out in more likely places to go, So if I said, back to your massage therapist days, like I said, if I want to find a massage therapist that's really good, the chance of me bumping into them at the grocery store are slim. But if I go to places where massage therapists are going to be, like a spa or stuff like this, you might not meet the one that's the right fit for you the first time, but you're more likely to have the right person be there. So you start thinking about, hey, if I want opportunities and I know where I want to go, where would these opportunities more likely be? And you start plugging yourself into those places, So like you said, if you're going back to becoming a leader, becoming a better business coach, hanging out with people that you can mentor from also helps you too, because you start going, where do these people hang out, and you learn from them, and you get leaders. So I definitely agree that luck kind of is this weird thing that shines on us from time to time, but there's a way to improve your odds of successful outcomes for sure. So Can you walk us through like a little bit more on your role from becoming a dominatrix to becoming a business coach, a writer, a speaker, and how has like developing networking and developing personal relationships helped you along that path?
Okay, so the transition for me, so I was the dominatrix, and concurrent to that, I had my supply outlet, and we actually hit a bankruptcy. We had several things happen all at once that was, it's kind of like the Titanic, right? If the Titanic only had 5 of their, ballasts bust open, they would have stayed afloat, but they had 6. So we had 3 major things happen all in a 45-day period. And so it was inevitable that we had to lay everybody off, and we restructured it. And then, within 4 months, I turned it from losing $10,000 a month to profiting $5,000 a month. And then, built it back up to the point that I sold it. And it was in that transition, it was in that going through all of the shifting and really taking a good hard look at what went wrong. What went wrong, like beyond the obvious, beyond the, people broke into our merchant account and stole thousands of dollars, beyond the, we had, $20,000, $30,000 worth of clients, unpaid client bills because they went belly up, beyond, just our summer slowdown hit early, beyond all of those really tangible things. I started to take a look and realize that, all of this leadership skills that I had in my personal life with the dominatrix world, I was not bringing that into my business. And that failure of leadership was a big part of it as well, in that, I hired some of the wrong people. I hired people who needed a job instead of hiring, the right people for the seats on the bus, and, not holding them fully accountable. And so we had a lot of shipping errors and lost a lot of money that way. And there are things, and it's good to take stock and say, okay, well, what's going on? And then in looking at this dominatrix world and all of the energy there, I started to pull that energy in, just from an energy perspective and in how I was running the business. And I noticed that every time I brought that in, that sales would go up. Client customer satisfaction would go up, and the business would run smoother. And then if I happened to let it slide, all those things would slide down. So I realized that energy, that piece, was really an important piece to bring into business. And I started to play around with it. I really wanted to do coaching. Of course, I'd always, kind of been doing psychotherapy along with the massage, because it was never about the physical pain. It was always about what was going on in their lives. And I've been doing that all the way through. So I wanted to move more into this coaching aspect, and I love business. So for me, it was kind of a natural progression, and I just had to get really comfortable with putting out in the world that I was going to, land with this Inner Dominatrix branding, because it is very controversial. But I also think it's powerful, because it makes people stop and think differently. And unless we think differently, we're not going to have new ideas, and we're not going to expand the way that we see the world and the possibilities that are there for us personally and for our businesses.
So I'm curious about this identity of moving into your brand, and because for me, I've struggled with this, and I know a lot of people struggle with this. Is you feel a destiny to do bigger things. You feel like a calling to do more things, but you're afraid to step out and scream to the world, I'm this other person that wants to do these things. And you're also doing it when you say, not only am I say, hey, I'm a business owner and I want to go off and be a coach. People are like, what the hell are you doing that for? You got a nice business. Like, why would you ever want to do that? And then to say, I'm also going to do it with this, I guess it's a bit polarizing. There's people that probably get very offensive of it. And then there's also the people that will be like, hey, this is kind of, novel, like, and they'll seek you out for the wrong intentions. So you do this, and you have to come to like grips with yourself, and you just say, hey, how do I go and I guess, put yourself out there as I'm a person, I identify with this. And the reason I'm asking this is because, like, I don't know you from the time you were making the transition, So for me, I'm like, of course you're the Inner Dominator. Of course you're a book writer. Of course you're a coach. Like, why would it be any different? Because that's who you are. That's how I know you. But there was a point when you weren't. How do you step into that role of becoming this person that's open about everything you're doing? Were you always that way?
No, I think like with everything in life, it is a process. It's a journey. It's, it's not overnight. And I think that's the big thing that I have a bugaboo about most marketing that's out there is like, oh, you just need the right language and you just need to define your ideal client. And it's not just that. It's all of the things. And it's kind of in business, here's what I see is that there's this twofold piece that happens is one, you need the tactical skills. So yes, you need to define who are you going to serve? How are you going to serve them? What are you doing? All of those things. But then you also need to do the inner work of shifting into, okay, hey, it's okay for me to do that. It's okay for me to say, I'm going to do this and getting more comfortable with it. The more you can do the work, the faster you become comfortable with doing the work. Mm-hmm. So, getting out there, and if you're coaching, get out there and coach. The more coaching sessions that you do, the faster you will build your confidence in coaching. And the more that you, especially, okay, I'll caveat this, but particularly if you do the coaching and you work with somebody, even if it's a peer, if you work with somebody and you're constantly like, okay, this is what came up in session, this is where I got triggered, and you work with those pieces, clear them out, and then each session you're going to up level. Each session you're going to get more comfortable. So it's a journey. It's just like if you wanted to say run a marathon and you've never run before, of course everybody's going to be like, yeah, right. But you start with doing a round around the block, or maybe just one side of the block that you run. You build that muscle. So that's one of my pet peeves in this whole marketing world now, is that everybody wants to promise overnight instant success, and it's never that. You still have to grow into it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like everything that I've done recently, it always starts off really poorly, but you get better. And so if you give up too soon, you're not going to have that chance to get better. So I've been to this thing like, hey, you got to just do things first. And we were kind of chit-chatting about this coaching thing a little bit before the show, and you kind of hit the nail on the head. Like, why would you wait till everything's in place to do something? Because the real heart of the matter is the doing of something. So if you're always preparing, you're not doing. So if you're not doing, you're not going to get better at the doing. So you might as well just start doing, and the preparation will come. Big thing that happened this week, Joe Rogan signed on Spotify for $100 million deal for his podcast, and you go, shit, he's crushing it. Like, I could never do that. But then you go back and you look at his first episodes and they're so terrible. Gary Vaynerchuk, same way. First episode, so terrible. You just have to get started and get going. And the other thing I think too that I've noticed is when you share bits of yourself that, like, even going back to this transition of manager to leader or something like that, but when you share bits and pieces of yourself, you find people relate to that. Like if I just said, hey, I'm the expert coach and this is all you know me as, people will go, okay, well, I don't really relate to that. But then you say, well, I also play football, or I also coach Little League, or I also do these other things. You're like, hey, I do those things. I know what there are. Like, I'm connected to you in another way. And I think that makes you a bit more relatable and more personable. And really what it is I think networking and business, a lot comes down to the relationships and building trust with people. And like every aspect of your life had to do with, I think, trust of some level, and you're developing trust, you're getting confidence with people. And the way you do that is you get people to like you, and you get people to like you because you have something in common. And I think you have to be able to be willing to share a little bit of your, your inner weirdness. I think everybody kind of relates to it. Like nobody knows like how this can relate, but people kind of like hold on to their quirky and they hold on to their weirdness. And if you say, hey, I like something that's kind of stupid, like this movie everybody thinks lame. Like there's a whole bunch of people that like really, really like, you know, like it secretly that just want to sit there and chat about it. So I think it's cool to be a bit more open and honest about like the stuff that you might feel like you should guard and not put out to the world. I think people want to see that. And I think it makes you more relatable. And at the very minimal, when you do that, people go, hey, I want to be like you, that's not afraid, that doesn't care that they're being bold and obnoxious and out in front. You're like, shit, this scares me too. You know, I don't like always going out there and doing it, but we do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that takes me to my next question. There's this idea to me of what all in means to me, but I'd like to get your take on what the term all in means to you, maybe regarding an idea or an outcome. What does it mean to be all in?
You know, I would say that for me, all in is letting yourself become completely immersed in the process and being willing to lose, being willing to do it wrong, being, you know, diving in regardless of all those things, regardless of your subconscious mind telling you, oh my God, this is going to be the scariest thing. You're going to die. Oh my goodness. Right. Like regardless of those, just go, okay, I'm all in. It's kind of like, you know, when you're standing at the edge of the plane and you're going to do skydiving, you've had that moment, you know, once you step off the plane, you are all in.
Mm-hmm.
It's that, like if you could actually jump into and commit that way, that you're in until you reach the ground. Like you have to keep going. There is no other option. And you know, for me, my personal development path is that all in kind of world. I have such a high commitment to it. I do personal development as an extreme sport, and and then, you know, business wise.
Hold on a second. Sorry about that. We have a little.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt your thought. So
business wise, being all in is the same. It's like if we can start training ourselves to think in terms of, all right, once I have thoroughly assessed what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it, then I'm going to keep going as if there is no other option. You know, and like you said, I love that you said, he's like, okay, I'm going to do this for a year. That's the ground, right? So from now until the ground, you are like, you're free falling, you're going, and you have no other choice. I think that's a great way to think about being all in.
Mm-hmm. I was just like, when you were talking about jumping out of an airplane, I was thinking exactly, there used to be this swimming pool we went to, and high school, junior high kids, and it had one of those diving towers, like those 3-level diving towers, and like the top one's like 30 feet off. Yeah. And there's that point where you're like, you're going up to the edge, you're looking back, you decide it, and then the lifeguard looks at you and goes, you know, gives you the number. He would do 1 if you're on the first one, 2 if you're on the second, and then 3 if you're on the third. And he'd give you that third, and your heart would just like leap, and you just run and do it. And then like once you like went off the edge, you're like, oh my God, there's nothing you can do until you get to the water, but you always came out safe. So I think that's like I was really resonating with that. Not everybody's jumped out of an airplane, but I was thinking about jumping off that board. So yeah, that's crazy. So talking about the people you work with, can you describe in detail, we kind of joked about this just a little bit ago, like you got to have your ideal client, but I do want to know, like, who is that person that you work the best with that really resonates with you and that you get the most out of? Both they get the most out of you and you get the most out of working with them.
Yeah, I love high achieving women who still have that nagging self-doubt. So these are the women who, you know, I've got clients who are, you know, Olympic athletes. They've run 8-figure businesses. These people, they've accomplished great things, but there's still this nagging little, I'm not doing enough, and I'm not getting it right, and maybe I need to go take this course, and it's not necessarily running all the time, but there's this space of deferring it to somebody else. So I love working with them because they take big action. They'll lean right in. They know what it feels like to lean in and take action. So when we start shifting things on an internal level to match what's going on with their drive and determination, things explode. So that is what I would say. The woman who's achieved at least multiple six figures, or has had a 7-8 figure business that they've sold and they've transitioned into a new business that they need support to get rolling with the new business.
It's amazing how when you work with somebody and it's almost like it's magic happens, because it's like they just are gravitating towards what you say and they're doing what you want to do, or they're challenging maybe your ideas, but you're coming up together as a team. And like separately you're not the same, but together you're like twice as, way more powerful than you are as two individuals. And they're just like, hey, let's just rock and roll with this thing. And they're not hemming and hawing. I think that's I could feel like what that energy feels like when you're in a team that just works really great. So, I think you did a very clear definition of exactly who you're looking to work with. So if they're looking to find you, how should they how should they connect with you, and what's kind of like the best process of getting familiar with who you are?
So I would suggest head over to innerdominatrix.com. You can grab a copy of Badass Intuition. That's the latest book. And that it gives you a 6-week boot camp to really get your intuition locked in so you can make those quick, powerful decisions. And then if you're ready to just dive into booking a session with me, if you want to do a consultation, you can go to bookdana.in.
Awesome. We'll put those links in the show notes. I encourage you to connect with Dana on these platforms. Find her, get the book, read the book, see if she's the right fit for you. And if you're a high achiever and you want to hire her on, please reach out. So thank you so much for coming on the show and chatting a little bit about your story. Your book goes into a whole hell of a lot more detail about who you are and your story behind it, the details. It's a very interesting read, and I highly recommend that as well too. So cool.
Thanks.
Thanks for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
Make sure to visit our website, therealnatepeo.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, so you'll never miss an episode of All In. While you're at it, if you found value, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if simply tell 2 friends about the show. Looking to connect? You can find Nate Peo on LinkedIn or Instagram.